Coercion looks like different things. Sometimes it's the intimidation, it's the feeling that your boyfriend will leave you if you don't have the abortion. It's the pressure from doctors saying that you have a health concern. They say that it's health care. You don't care about those girls. As soon as they do the abortion physically in the clinics, they give you your juice and your crackers and they send you on.
Tragically, forced and coerced abortions are real, and it's horrible. Based on Charlotte Lozier Institute research of unwanted abortion studies, it confirms about 60% of women who have had abortions report high levels of pressure to abort from one or more sources. Those same women report higher levels of subsequent mental health and quality of life issues. This is a hidden epidemic, and it's far larger than most people imagine. Welcome to Straight Talk on Life Issues. I'm Victor Nieves, president of Life Issues Institute. Today we'll be speaking with Cherie Marie, an author, speaker, and the visionary behind Her Refuge, a ministry devoted to guiding women toward healing after abortion trauma. Well, Cherie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
As we jump in today, this is a very important conversation. I think it's one that's not discussed enough. And you have an incredible testimony in this. Your work is amazing. I think, as always, the best place for us to start, if you would, please share your story with us.
Oh, yes. Well, I was 14 years old and I was pregnant and I didn't quite know my body yet. So I was having a conversation with one of my girlfriends and we just happened to mention that I had missed my monthly. And I thought naively that I couldn't get pregnant because I wasn't an adult. And she decided that she would aggressively get me to go take a test. And I did. But when my mother found out, she was very upset. I was very frightened. I was around a lot of aggressive people in my family. And I was told always don't ask questions, keep quiet. And they were told me that day we were going to go to the clinic and I was going to get tested to see how far along I was. And I had never been to a gynecology exam before, and my girlfriend tried to explain it to me. And I went into the room when they called my name. My mother made me go alone. And I went in, they did an exam, and then escorted me back out to the waiting room, to the counter. And the lady handed me a pamphlet, and I was very confused because I knew I had to take a blood test or a urine test. And the doctor busts in the door and he says, she was further along than expected. You'll feel intense pain and cramps throughout the night, and it'll just be the procedure doing its job. And tomorrow you'll return to be cleaned out. And that was very confusing to me because this was just to find out if I was pregnant, how far along I was, to confirm it. And that night I was alone in my room. My mother didn't speak to me for about a week and very little words. The next day we went to a different facility and they performed the abortion. When I woke up from the abortion, I heard the nurses talking and they mentioned how far along I was. And I was 14 weeks. And that was very hard to comprehend, but it was very difficult.
And you were just a child at 14 years old. The pressure, the confusion to just be forced into this situation. I can't imagine what that was like for you.
Yes. I mean, I was 12, 2 years before that. I was just a baby. So I shouldn't even have been involved in a situation where I would get pregnant. So in that, absolutely, I was wrong for that. But the abortion, it was just not my choice to do that. And I didn't know what was going on when I was in that facility.
Talk to us about the facility itself, those who were there. Do you feel that there was any effort to look out for you as a child, as a 14-year-old girl? You're in this position that, Lord, I can only imagine. Did it seem that the workers cared about your best interest, or were they just along to cash a check?
There was two facilities. The first one that I went to, everybody, they wouldn't speak to you except for when they needed to speak with you. When I went in, the nurse just kind of gave me direction on how to lay on the table, and then that was it. The doctor came in, said nothing to me except for scooch down, which the ladies understand that. And then he spoke to me again at the counter, and that was it. At the second facility, when I walked in, I'm looking at the nurses like, help me, help me. I couldn't say anything. Was told to keep quiet, don't ask questions. And I'm looking at them and I'm crying, and they're just go, move, down the door, go in that door, lay here. They didn't want to have a discussion with you. And they can clearly see that I was a child. And nobody asked me, are you feeling pressure? Is this what you want to do? Are you sure? No questions. They never talked to me. about anything.
And you said you were crying.
Oh, yeah, I was crying. Yeah, actually, when I went in to have to put the robe on they give you, I had to sit there for a moment and I just cried in my robe, but the tears were just all over it. I mean, it was wet when I went into the procedure, but nobody asked me any questions. They didn't explain to me what was going on. I didn't sign anything because I was a minor. Yeah, they didn't say anything. They didn't care at all.
And I want to pause here just for a second for our listener and restate the significance of your story, of what you're describing to us. I can't believe that there are still those who will try to claim that the abortion industry is even anything similar to healthcare, that they care about women, that this is all of the lies that we hear over and over and over again. How could anybody pretend that it's healthcare to look the other way as a crying 14-year-old girl is brought in to have a procedure against her will? That's a very sick thing to do. And your story is heartbreaking, but it's not the only one. There are so many women who have experienced something very similar to this, and they've spoken out about the fact that the abortion industry, Planned Parenthood, etc., they couldn't care less about the plight of these young women that are walking through these doors. They couldn't care. They just want to cash that check.
Absolutely. And also in this day and age where Roe versus Wade is now moved aside, we have the abortion pill. And unfortunately, these girls are really not being cared for because they're taking it. They're becoming the abortionist and their bathrooms are becoming the clinic. And they're so scared to go to the doctor if they're feeling like a fever or they're feeling sick or something's going on. They're not going to get a checkup because they figure they're going to get in trouble if they do. And there's women that are traumatized even more so now with that abortion pill.
Tell us more about that. What is your experience as somebody who's been through this, seeing the development? Because we're all very concerned about the abortion pill. As you mentioned, now we hear the stories of even, an abusive boyfriend or whomever it might would be ordering these pills under false pretenses online, maybe lying about their identity. There's an abundance of ways where people can get these dangerous drugs and then crush them up. They'll put them in somebody's drink, or they'll, force somebody just straight up through violence. They'll force somebody to take these pills, killing their children. And unfortunately, because of the lax distribution of these drugs, we're seeing what I would consider to be something of an epidemic, where there are more and more young women who now they don't even have to be drug into a physical location. There is no secondary place that they have to be taken to. It's just in the mailbox. And like you said, these pills are turning bathrooms into the new abortion clinic. Do you see this as a rising issue, the concern of forced and coerced abortion like what you experienced?
Yes, absolutely. Coercion looks like different things. Sometimes it's the intimidation, it's the feeling that your boyfriend will leave you if you don't have the abortions, the pressure from doctors saying that you have a health concern, but it's hurry up, let's get this done. It's not really letting them take time to make that decision. It's parents putting the pressure on them. But like you said, the pill right now is absolutely out of control and it's too easy to get. Even in states that are banned, it's still easy to get because you can get it out of the country and it's not stopped in the mail if it's coming through out of the country, but if it's local, it's stopped. And these young ladies are they're posting pictures of what's coming out on Reddit so that they can show they lied to me. And there's girls that are wanting to take their own lives because they're seeing fingers and toes and little faces, and it's traumatizing and it's making it worse. And they say that it's healthcare. You don't care about those girls. As soon as they do the abortion physically in the clinics, they give you your juice and your crackers and they send you on. And if you ask them for help after that, they don't want to give you the help and the counseling and the recovery that you need because then it's admitting it's wrong or that it hurts you having those abortions. So they're not giving you any help.
As an outspoken advocate for others who have been forced or coerced into abortion, we look at the current landscape, our laws, etc. What would you say to the lawmaker who might be listening? Whether it's a member of Congress, a state legislator, what can be done practically that would protect the 14-year-old girl who's being forced to have an abortion? With your experience, what do you say to them?
Well, I have a strong political stance and I have a strong resistance to speak politically. I feel like trauma isn't political, healing isn't political, listening isn't political, and I feel that this isn't politics. However, it's affected by politics. And I feel like I understand that we're taking a step forward by the Roe versus Wade being eliminated. However, and on one side, you have them saying we need to be 100% get rid of abortion. But then on the other side, we're saying, let's do baby steps. And we are doing baby steps. We are making a progress. We are progressing, but that abortion pill, that has got to be stopped. It has got to be eliminated. I mean, if we can stop certain drugs and certain things from being passed through in the mail, why can't we stop an abortion pill? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, and we know the percentage of women who take that pill, it's about 1 in 10 will suffer very severe medical complications, side effects, whether it's
Absolutely.
hemorrhaging, profuse bleeding, even sepsis. People have
Yes.
died, and they're really not being warned. I would say it's a safe statement to say in the vast majority of cases, there is no informed consent. This pill is being sent out without any meaningful medical oversight, and it's just distributed all over. How about those who are maybe not involved in the political process, but perhaps a member of the church, maybe even a pastor? What can average everyday people do to ensure that young women are protected from being forced into something like this?
I believe that in the church, we need to be more open to speak about it. We need to be prepared to be able to guide them in the process of recovery. We need to be able to hear them and provide a recovery for them because not all churches are doing this. Not all organizations within those churches are doing this. It's a problem because you have these women sitting there on the pews, which I was one. I felt like I had a relationship with the Lord, but I had a glass window, and I can hear the Lord, I can speak to him, I can pray to him, I can have a relationship and do ministry, but I still had that wall there saying, but you don't know what but you know what I did and nobody else knows. And so we have to give them a safe place to be able to talk and to communicate and to go through a safe recovery so that they can become stronger individuals and not end up in prisons and end up, destructive in their life because that's what happens.
As we go back and think about your story, because I think that part of this is just so important. There's so many people who they just haven't heard from people like you. They just haven't heard the account of the lived experience of people that have been forced into this with all that happened and the coercion, the force. You were just brought there against your will. You were a child. I mean, you had no understanding really of what's going on. I'm sure that impacted your relationship with your family. You mentioned that your mother, I think you said it was a week, she went without speaking to you. What did it do in the long term to your entire family, this abortion?
In my family, we never spoke about it again. And to the day my mother passed, we never spoke about it. It was never a conversation. It was just do what we say, and that's it. When they walked me into the abortion, they had a hold of my arm because I was seeing all these photos of babies that are dead. And it was traumatizing just walking in. And I didn't understand, why is this here? Why are they doing this? I'm thinking I'm just going to get a test and all this stuff is out here. And they're just saying, keep your mouth shut, keep moving, don't say anything, keep your head down. But they never asked me how was I doing afterwards. They never asked me, how are you feeling physically? They didn't check on me. They didn't do anything. So there was never a conversation.
You mentioned that you had seen images on the way in. Were there sidewalk counselors and advocates outside of the facility as you went in?
It was so overwhelming. I'm not sure if there was any positive sidewalk advocates, but there was a whole lot of pictures of babies. It was terrible. And it was frightening to me because I was already scared and I was already nervous and this all happening. And when I first told my mom, I was in a room full of family members and someone told me, you will not have a Black child. And that right there was an aggressive conversation that I already started to feel so pressured. So I was already nervous. I was already scared. And then to go to the clinic and see I understand there's a time and a place for it, but that was so hard going in there because I didn't even understand what that was.
And then to have no explanation, right? You go into this place that's
No
supposedly a
explanation.
medical facility. They don't give you any explanation. They know, as you counted in your story, you were crying, you were terrified, you were confused. Being forced into this position, they gave you nothing afterward. They just kick you out. You said they gave you juice and they told you to go. It's such a incredible disservice for people who claim to be, again, I go back to this, they claim to be involved in quote unquote healthcare. As we listen and we get more information about your story, no piece of that was healthcare. No point in
None
that
of it.
interaction with you were they being healthcare professionals. And to know, on top of this, now that you had seen those images, there was definitely a lot that needed to be unpacked for you as a young woman following that. And no doubt the healing process. I want to mention there's a part of your story there that you said, and it stood with me. I've heard people say, quote, any reason for abortion is a good reason. And I have asked them, what if it is a racial reason? And sometimes people look at me like I'm crazy. And I say, well, that has happened. That has absolutely happened. There have been those who have been forced, coerced, or just chose by their own free will that they wanted to have an abortion because they didn't like the race of their child. What do you say to people who would claim abortion is just for any reason whatsoever, including if somebody just said that they didn't want to have a mixed race child?
Well, there's a lot there. There's never a reason to have an abortion. Never. I understand that we're allowing, in case for the health of the woman, I sort of understand that in a certain sense. But to any other reason, it's outlandish. Like, you can't say that you don't like the fact that the baby is black, and so I'm going to make sure I'm aborting it or make somebody abort it, you know? And in my family, there was a few individuals that were highly racist. And so when they got a hold of it, it was, you're not doing this. And there was never a conversation, you're too young, you can't do this at your age. It was none of that. It was just strictly because the child was going to be black.
And I
Yeah.
have had people tell me to my face that they think that is a just reason to get an abortion, that is A-okay, that if somebody just says purely because of the skin color, that that's a justification for abortion.
Not even, I don't I don't like to get political or anything, but even just somebody getting raped, like, it's not the baby's fault. You absolutely can still honor the life of that child who is innocent and put it up for adoption. You don't have to raise the baby. You don't have to be the baby's lifetime mother, in the sense of raising it. But you do need to let that baby live because God gave it life for a reason.
I'm curious, as we speak about this, was the baby's father ever informed? Did he know any of the details of this? Or if he was informed, what was his reaction?
He was absolutely amazing. He was with me the whole time. At the clinic, he was not with me, but when we went to do the actual abortion, he was with me. Many years later, I spoke with him, and he admitted to me that he has gone through a whole lot of depression and anger and different feelings that he went through. He had to go through it alone because he was married and had other children. He actually named the baby, and he told me that, and that was such a healing moment for me because I wasn't going through it alone. And he even told me that if his mother would have known, she said that she would have helped us raise a baby. And that was sort of the motive for my mother is the next day you're going to go get this done. So we didn't have time to go talk to his mom, and they didn't want that to happen. It was, this is what's happening, and we're going to do it. And he felt intimidated as well, so we didn't say anything to her. He told her afterwards. And to hear that, it was heartbreaking, but it also felt good to know that, that she cared about that. But if I knew that she would have helped us, it would at least give me the strength to run because I just felt like if I say anything, it's just going to make my life worse because living with these individuals is not going to work. And so if I knew I had somebody that I could go to, that would have probably been the only strength that I had to run.
We've heard that same testimony as well many times for people who are in a position that they don't know what to do. And again, going back to the fact that you're just a child, everything about this was so unfair. It was heartbreaking. Had you known that there may have been help, I believe that's why the abortion industry is so pushy. They're so forceful. It's now. You have to make a decision right now. They have a profit motive, so there's obviously that part of it. But they really want women to make a decision, taking this away from the context of a child or force or coercion. They really want women to make a decision right now. In an emotional state where they're scared, they're confused, they don't want them to have the chance to interact with the pregnancy resource center or with a friend, a family member, a church community that's going to wrap around them and love them and say, we're going to be here for you, because that can change everything. And for many people, it has changed everything. The abortion industry doesn't want to provide you that opportunity. They talk about choice and they use all of this language. They don't want you to have an informed choice. They don't want you to operate right then and there. They want to hijack you as quickly as they possibly can and just get you on the escalator and convince you to have that abortion. Speaking broadly here, what do you think it is that has allowed coercion and force to be such a part of the abortion conversation? What is it about our society, about our laws perhaps? Why is this such a big issue? Because it's something that impacts far more women than people realize.
I think a lot of people don't believe it. I was listening to something recently and they were like, women being victims, it's not true. It's very little percentage, and that is not true. Because coercion can look like so many things, and they figure if we intimidate you or we give you no options and we're able to guide you or force you to the decision that we want you to make for our reasons. And the percentage is so much higher than people realize. And what I've noticed in my recovery, and I have mentioned more than one recovery, but when I had the recovery I went to, there was women that were 80 years old and they were just now speaking about it. And they didn't feel like they could speak about it because they're on a certain side that's, we're for this. So they felt like they couldn't say anything. And finally, 80 years later, she was willing to say, I'm a grown woman, I'm going to say something. And I'm going to get help. Listening to the testimonies, like, a lady, she was 21 and she just cried and cried. She had a basket full of these little babies holding in her hand as she tried to name each one of them. And her boyfriend was pressuring her into having these abortions because he was a drug addict and he didn't want to share the finances with the baby. So he pressured her and pressured her. And there's just so many situations that, it is coercion. It is force. It is manipulation, definitely manipulation. Sometimes people have conversations where they're just constantly telling you that one decision they want you to make, and then they're talking as if they care to you, but they keep mentioning that one decision because they're trying to manipulate your mind to thinking this is where I really need to go. And it's so unfortunate. So you don't realize it until it's too late. You don't realize, man, they did manipulate me and force me.
So what do you think can be done? What actions can we as a society take to protect women from those coerced abortions?
Talking about it, making it a conversation. Even in our more conservative areas, we have to talk about it. We have to not judge the ones that chose it and felt that they had a reason to do it. It's not about how you did it, how you came to that. It's the fact that you did it, and now we need to be there to help you get through it. And the ones that are thinking about doing it, they need to be hearing, our voices need to be louder than those other voices. Our voices need to be loud enough that they can hear us telling them it's okay, there's options out there, there's places that can help you, there's places that can house you, there's places that will provide, diapers and anything else you need. And if you did make that decision, there are places for recovery, there's places to help you. There's so much out there. And it's so sad that it took me 30-something years before I even heard about recovery. And it's this huge thing that's been out since the 80s. But I never heard of it. And so I appreciate how there's so many different recoveries because you may reach one that I may not reach. It might be an area that you're able to get a hold of somebody and help them that I may never ever meet.
What is your final word to a woman right now who maybe she's been considering abortion? She's in a place she never thought she would be. She's scared, confused, whatever it is, and she's listening to this program and she's hearing your testimony. What's your word to her if she was to consider choosing abortion?
So nobody has a right to force you into something that doesn't sit right in your spirit. And God is not the author of confusion. He leads in peace and wisdom and love. And if your heart is unsettled, then that's worth listening to. And you can step back and pray and seek godly counsel and someone who will honor both you and your situation. You're not alone. You're not without options. There's people who will stand with you and support you and help you carry this moment with compassion. And no matter what you're facing, God sees you. He cares for you, and He will guide you one step at a time. And as a church, we must rise and not just speak about life. We stand with these women in a place of refuge, truth, and healing. And where there's been silence, there needs to be compassion. Where there's been pressure, there needs to be freedom. And where there's been pain, there needs to be restoration. In Jesus' name. No woman should feel rushed or pressure or silenced into this decision. It's not right.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, hearing Cherie's story is heartbreaking, and I think perhaps the most heartbreaking part of all is that it's one that's shared by so many young women who have literally been forced into an abortion. You hear the story of a 14-year-old girl, a child, no clue what's going on, no voice to speak out, and nobody stood up and nobody spoke out on behalf of her. The Planned Parenthood workers, the abortion clinic, they just saw money walking through the door. They cashed the check. They gave her, like she said, they gave her her juice, and they sent her on her way. No explanation for what had just happened. We see this all across the country. Thousands and thousands of women who've experienced very, very similar, literally being forced often as children to go and get an abortion against their will. This highlights the importance of our work. I encourage you to visit our website, lifeissues.org. We need to create a culture of life, and we do that through pro-life education programs just like this and the other resources we have available. I encourage you to share those with your friends, your family members, your church community as we fight to end abortion and protect young women just like Cherie from that horrible fate. Be sure to tune in next week for another Straight Talk on Life Issues.
With SRN News, I'm Mary Rose. Poland's foreign secretary says he appreciates President Trump's decision to deploy an additional 5,000 U.S. troops to his country.
I want to thank President Trump for his announcement that the presence of American troops in Poland will be maintained more or less at previous level.
Polish Foreign Minister Sikorsky. President Trump is touting what he calls a major jobs milestone. And correspondent John Scott reports.
President Trump says 100% of net new jobs since 2025 have been created in the private sector, as his administration seeks to root out unnecessary bureaucrats within the federal government. Speaking of the swearing in of Kevin Warsh as the new Federal Reserve Chair, Mr. Trump said the administration cut excess government positions, adding that many former federal workers are now earning significantly more in private industry. John Scott reporting.
President Trump began testing his midterm message on Friday, where he told the crowd in southern New York he's lived up to a key economic promise.
I cut your taxes. I cut the taxes on workers, families, small business who are the soul of the state, and I made special promises that I would save you thousands of dollars a year.
The president also says New York Congressman Mike Lawler pushed hard for boosting the dedication for state and local taxes known as SALT.
Mike Lawler's fantastic. He's fantastic. He is a fantastic. I call him Mr. Salt. He didn't stop. He wouldn't stop. He was driving us crazy. We have to get salt. We have to get salt back. And he got it back, and he's a terrific guy. You're lucky to have him.
This is SRN News. Most churchgoers are reaching out.
A new survey released by Lifeway Research reveals that 77% of Protestants who attend services regularly say they have developed lasting relationships with people in their church. 66% tell Lifeway that they intentionally try and get to know people in their congregation. The study authors added, quote, building relationships is one of 8 signposts that measure characteristics evident in believers who are progressing in spiritual maturity. Michael Harrington reporting.
According to a new study from West Virginia University, most adults who attend religious services go to several different churches at least occasionally. The report indicates that roughly 12% of all adults who attend services go to multiple congregations regularly, and 45% do so from time to time. Of those who attend multiple congregations, about 3/4 attend 2 congregations, and the rest attend 3 or more. This is SRN News. The NCAA is gaining momentum toward approving an age window for athlete eligibility.
The NCAA's Division I cabinet has discussed possible implementation of an age-based eligibility model should it be approved, and signaled it would consider voting on it at its meeting next month. The age-based eligibility model would give athletes a window of 5 years to compete in Division I, starting immediately after their high school graduation or their 19th birthday, whichever comes first. It would also eliminate waivers for extended eligibility except for pregnancy, religious missions, or active duty military service. The model is similar to an idea included in an executive order by President Donald Trump on April 3rd. I'm Gethin Coolball.
Thousands of Cubans gathered on Friday before the U.S. Embassy in Havana to protest a U.S. decision to indict former President Raul Castro over the downing of 2 civilian airplanes 30 years ago. More at srnnews.com.
Speech on. Selected. Screen record.